What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. Alright, so I'm retconning my own video series. With Planet Hulk finished, I had intended to jump directly into World War Hulk. And the first video of World War Hulk will be like, so with Planet Hulk finished. So, you know, kind of bear with me on that one. But I've long since been trying to find the origin story of Lyra, the Incredible Hulk's daughter, because you guys love Incredible Hulk stuff. You guys go ham over the Incredible Hulk stuff. I don't know what it is. Post a comment because I want to know, why do you guys love Incredible Hulk content so much? I'm kind of curious. But I finally found it. I was finally able to locate it. And so because of this, I want to cover this story. Now, the story of Lyra is actually really interesting because it involves what are basically called the gender wars. Now, the great thing about this, as you know, this particular story, as it's effectively written by Jeff Parker, is that it focuses largely on this idea of an alternate future. Now, in Marvel Comics, we have all kinds of alternate realities, and I believe this one is referred to as Earth 971. But for those of you guys who are new to Marvel Comics, this of course was before Secret Wars. So alternate universes receive numerical designations. Now, all this really originated with the Captain Britain Mad Jim Jasper story, where the main Marvel continuity was just referred to as Earth 616. It was a random numerical designation. There was really no rhyme or reason. Because of that, Marvel just began to arbitrarily assign numbers. So there's really no basis behind how those numbers are assigned. They just get numbers. It's just like Earth 1610 is the ultimate universe. 1610 does not stand for anything. It doesn't mean anything in particular. It's just 1610. DC is a lot easier to understand because they take a more linear approach. So you have like Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4, so on and so forth. Then you have like Earth S for Shazam back during the pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths era, I think, and maybe even post-Crisis. But the idea here is that this is an Earth 970 or 971, and what we're told, or at least how we're told this story, is actually fluctuating between the past and the present, and it works pretty well. We're basically given the Incredible Hulk as he's going against, you know, the US Army. Now, this is not wildly significant with the Incredible Hulk. It really just shows us how the Hulk lives his life, that he's constantly on the move. What is important here is a character named Thundra. Now, Thundra has been around since like 1972. She was a Roy Thomas creation. She was really designed to bolster the roster of the Incredible Hulk line of stories, because the Incredible Hulk always suffered from the Superman complex. If the Incredible Hulk gets stronger, the angrier he gets. And if he continues to get angrier whenever he goes against a foe that he cannot initially beat, well, then eventually his strength will get to the point where he can beat that foe because his strength is limitless. So how do you write a story that's compelling with a character like that? Well, Peter David did it by focusing largely on Bruce Banner's father, the fact that his father was abusive. And we've covered this before, but the idea that, you know, the abusive experiences that Bruce Banner had were the reason why the Incredible Hulk persona emerged in the first place, because it's basically the physical manifestation of all of Bruce Banner's anger. I almost said Bruce Wayne. It's a physical manifestation of all of Bruce Banner's anger and resentment towards the world. But Thundra was designed to be this feminist element, to really tie into young girls. Now, this was a huge thing back in the early 1970s. I mean, you know, we were coming out and we were really in, you know, a good portion of the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement, contrary to what a lot of people think, was not really so much a African-American movement, so much as it was a equality movement. I mean, a lot of the emphasis is put on African Americans, and there was a lot of action with regards to African Americans. But, you know, if you go back and look at any of the old speeches of Martin Luther King, if you go back and look at any of the old speeches of a lot of the prominent civil rights movement leaders who weren't necessarily those that advocated violence or those who held strict adherence to African American values, a lot of the statements that were made pertain to everybody. And if you go back and watch any of the old footage with regards to civil rights, you'll see a multicultural group of people as opposed to just African Americans. But the goal of Marvel at the time was to tap into this movement. That's one of the reasons why we got Shang-Chi, that's why we got Luke Cage, that's why we got Iron Fist Danny Rand. It was tapping into all these different elements of multiculturalism. This really came to a head in 1975 with Chris Claremont's Giant Size X-Men, when it was a new multicultural roster of X-Men from people who hailed from different locations around the world. Thundra was designed to be one of, you know, a series of characters going all the way back to Carol Danvers, really, that serve the purpose of trying to bring young girls into comic books, but also showing diversity in the sense that Thundra was every every ounce as strong and capable as Ben Grimm and the Incredible Hulk to a degree. And so it was like this Wonder Woman-esque sort of character who could hold her own against some of the strongest men in Marvel Comics. Now, this struck a chord with some readers because they hated the idea of just constantly having feminism thrown in their face, but it also struck a chord with some readers who loved the idea of seeing more prominent female characters. It really depended on the viewpoints of those individuals, their life experiences, and what it was that they were looking for in comic books. But the overall goal of this particular story more or less highlights the case that Thundra is using a bit of deception. And this is kind of the crazy thing, because the story is given to us largely in a third-person monologue. That is to say, someone who is effectively telling us everything that's going on. And what we learn, at least, by way of Jeff Parker going through and retconning things, is he's essentially telling us that all the times that Thundra had gone into the past and fought the various heroes, it was for a couple purposes. Now, we knew, even going all the way back to her first appearance, we knew that Thundra was a time traveler. Like, we knew that she hailed from the future. That wasn't something new. This isn't something newly created. The motivation behind it is the reason why it is a huge deal. When she first popped up, it was the simple argument, women are better than men and just as capable as men, and so Thundra is going to prove that by fighting some of the strongest men in existence. What we actually learn here is that in the world that she hails from, that throughout their own experiences, their own actions, their own investigations, and their own efforts and so on, that men continue to improve in terms of intelligence, their knowledge of science, mathematics, athleticism, so on and so forth. The problem with this was that women were also keeping up as well, but it created a rift between the two of them, that men weren't able to accept women being equal, and women couldn't accept being on the same foot as men. Instead, each group began to basically go about their own individual arguments, and for women especially, it was the idea that if we are equal than men, then we can be better than them. And so what this did is it effectively led to the gender wars, in the sense that you had men who were now being educated separate from women. You had women who were now engaging in exercise activities and political politics that were outside, or at least beyond the scope of the ability for men to affect. And so because of this, it started to create this massive rift, and it was this sort of separation between the genders. Now, as time progressed, because men were trying to keep up with women and trying to keep themselves ahead of the curve, a lot of men ended up irradiating themselves. Now, we're not explicitly told by Jeff Parker whether or not this ties into the Hulk, but it seems like it does. It seems like a lot of men in this society had looked at the Incredible Hulk as virtually limitless in terms of strength and aspired to be equal to that. And so because of that, they basically irradiated themselves, and in doing so, made themselves infertile, meaning that there were no more new children being born following this war that had taken place around 20 years prior to that. And so what we learn is that with Thundra coming back to the modern day and going against the Incredible Hulk, this is done because of the fact that the Hulk is largely considered to have been the strongest being that ever lived, because again, his strength was limitless. There was no limit to how strong he could get. And so while Thundra fights against him, and while he is able to hold his own, she essentially says that, hey, look, once the conflict comes to an end, once Hulk proves just how capable he is, she says, hey, look, I'm not here to really harm you. I'm here because I need to find someone who's equal to me. I basically need to find a man. I need to find a man that's on par with me that can allow the human race to continue. And so what she does is she actually embraces the Incredible Hulk and she kisses him. Now, of course, we know that kissing does not, well, I guess it does kind of lead to procreation, but in the context of simply just kissing someone, kissing doesn't produce children. Instead, what we learn is that when Thundra had kissed the Incredible Hulk, she had actually taken cells from the inside of his cheek. She had traveled back to her home dimension, and they had effectively used these cells to impregnate her, to basically use, vitro fertilization in order to make her pregnant, the first woman to actually become pregnant in about 20 years. And so following this, what had happened was she'd given birth to a daughter. And because Thundra realized that she was basically growing old, a time would come when she would no longer be able to remain the leader of these women in this, new United States of America that was now the United Sisterhood Republic, I think it was, because of the fact that they were waging a war against men, that someone would have to take up her mantle. Someone would have to be equal to her in strength and be able to continue her efforts. And so the daughter that she gave birth to was essentially Lyra. And Lyra is a combination of the strength that Thundra has, as well as the Incredible Hulk, which meant that she was now capable of being just as strong as her mother, if not a little bit stronger, carry on the efforts of this war and eventually lead towards destroying the entirety of men on the face of the planet Earth. But with that being said, guys, this is kind of a weird story. It's a gender war story. That's really all it is. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained and you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and hit the subscribe button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments section. And yeah, now we'll catch you all later. Peace.